This is Miriam Raftery with the East County Magazine radio show on KNSJ 89.1 FM Descanso. And today, my very special guest is Graham Mitchell, El Cajon's city manager. He's the man behind the curtain who keeps everything running smoothly out there in the city and on occasion steps in to troubleshoot when concerns arise. And we're going to be talking about one of those issues today. Graham, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been too long, I think, with the pandemic. Haven't, been out there in City Hall much lately.
I know we miss you.
Well, I'll have to come back. So anyway, the city of El Cajon and the county have become embroiled in this disagreement over how to handle the homelessness situation, which, I mean, everyone agrees it's a big problem in El Cajon as it is across much of the region. But recently, you found out that the county was putting a lot of homeless people into 8 motels in El Cajon through a voucher program. Graham, can you start by telling us how you found out about that and what happened when you went to check it out in person?
Certainly, we've always known that the county ran a voucher program just because of the media. It's in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Counties never approached us. County elected officials or staff have never approached us and given us details about that. So we're learning through, like we do with most things from the county, from a press release. So one of the things that we started noticing around a couple of the motels is a spike in crime, and our specifically our drug detectives or our narcotics detectives started noticing people that they've never seen before. And we started making contact, and they were drug dealers, and they were drug dealers from outside the area that were sort of coming into El Cajon. And we noticed that they were preying on those that were staying at this motel. And so it made us start thinking, well, what's going on that we don't know? And so we started digging a little deeper. And we actually had our police officers go out and talk to all of every single motel in the entire city and hotel, the front counter, and just asked how many people are here on vouchers. And we found out that 158 folks were on vouchers through the county of San Diego. That's a lot of people.
It is a lot, and I think especially troubling is the increase in the crime and the drug dealers. That you've mentioned. The drug you yourself went out to check this out, I understand, and had kind of a disturbing encounter with a drug user and apparently a dealer out there. Tell us about that.
So I went out to one of the sites just to see what was going on. I asked some people to clean up some trash, and there was a gentleman that had a rolled up dollar bill and was about to snort some sort of narcotic. I asked him not to, and he acquiesced, and he went away. But I noticed out of the corner of my eye, another man sort of slumped over, trying to stand up. It was obvious he was on fentanyl or some sort of drug that was really doing a doozy on him. And
medical distress.
Almost in and out of consciousness. And so I was trying to make verbal contact with this man to see, does he need help, and try to ascertain, do I need to call 911 to see if the paramedics need to come out and administer Narcan to him. And I noticed while I was having this or attempting to have this conversation with this man, there was a guy on a bicycle sort of riding around us. And he eventually said, "Hey, I got it," meaning he probably had the Narcan.
Yeah. And I want to caution, by the way, that we're on radio, so I know what he said to you, but we can, not use the particular foul word.
I won't use that language.
Yeah.
So as he circled me, I said, I got to call 911 because it was becoming apparent that he needed assistance.
Yes.
And at that point, I was told to leave the premises using profanity.
Yeah.
And I was escorted back to my car, and I drove away.
Wow, very frightening.
Very frightening. And then I noticed, what I noticed then, Miriam, is almost at the corner of that motel across the street, there were people set up, and they were literally set up waiting for people to wake up to sell drugs to that were in the motel. And that's our concern, is that if you're going to turn a motel into a homeless shelter, it should act like a homeless shelter. Right. So ECTLC, for example, perimeter.
East County Transitional Living Center, for people that don't know the acronym.
Thank you. You and I can't just walk in. We have to show ID. We have to have a purpose to be there. They
Yeah.
have security there, right? And there's a protection for those that are being housed there. They're safe. The people that are being housed by the county through vouchers are not safe.
Wow. That's really
They're,
disturbing.
they're left to their own devices. So that was our concern, and that's what sort of prompted the need for us to take some action
Yeah.
to protect our own community.
And we'll talk about that in a minute. Since I don't have the county, have a spokesperson here today, I just want to explain for those that aren't familiar how the voucher program is supposed to work. In theory, they place people here who are homeless, get them at least off the street into a motel room for, I believe it's 28 days, and then they can transfer them to another hotel for another 28 days. According to the county, about 30% of these people were then transitioned into permanent housing or long-term housing. So I guess they've had some success with it. But obviously there's some problems that it's causing, not only for the city, but as you've noted, for the safety of the homeless folks themselves. You also have found a problem, I understand, with smoke detectors that some of them had tampered with.
So as part of we have a regular inspection program of motels, and we were going to be inspecting Travelodge. So I actually asked a company just to see what the experience was. Yeah, and that day we went out there, 60% of the hotels or the motel rooms were either missing a detector or had the batteries removed. In part because there's a lot going on in those rooms. We found propane gas stoves
Oh gosh.
a lot of smoking that was occurring. And to the credit of the motel manager and the Travelodge did a great job. They
Yeah.
had a large box of smoke detectors. And as a fire inspector went and identified that detector doesn't work, it was quickly replaced. So
Good.
everyone is put into safety. Again, this is now an economic burden on the city to ensure that the county's program is offering a safe place for.
Well, right. And it could have been even worse. What if somebody fell asleep smoking or something and started a fire, and then there's no there's no smoke detector. Somebody could die of smoke inhalation or fire. How many homeless people now does El Cajon have? I know it went up a lot from the start of the pandemic to now.
So, well, first of all, you'll hear a county supervisor talk about this spike, 68% spike in homeless population.
Which is based on the point in time count, I believe, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
What's interesting, those aren't people on the streets. Those are actually people that are sheltered.
Oh,
And
okay.
if you look at the number of shelter beds that we believe we have, 362, and there's over 600 sheltered homeless, that means either the point in time count's wrong, or the county infused another 300 people into our community. So
is that counting? Maybe do they count somebody who's in a motel as being
they do
housed?
Okay, they do. So it's it's almost a circular argument where the county's saying, well, you have so many more homeless. Well, no, duh, you put a whole bunch of homeless in our community. So it's a circular reasoning.
Let's talk about that, because I know one of the things that the mayor has voiced frustration with, and you too, I believe, is that at least some of these homeless people in the motels have come from outside El Cajon. We're not sure exactly how many, and I know you're trying to find that out. The county has basically admitted that at least, I think it's 37% of them or 35%, something like that, are not from El Cajon at all. They're from other parts of the county, mostly East County, but not El Cajon. Of the 63% or so that are from El Cajon, we don't know how many are the unincorporated area, which technically is county land, versus how much is actually people who were, picked up off the streets in the city of El Cajon and are homeless. So, Graham, I know you sent a public records request to the county trying to find that out, among other things. Have you had any response yet to that?
I haven't, and I wouldn't call it a public records request at this point. I have a good relationship with county staff.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that they'll act in good faith and provide the information that we've asked for. I think it's a little irresponsible for the county to put out a press release saying 63% are from El Cajon. And then there's like this little asterisk,
Yeah.
including unincorporated El Cajon. It's like one of those ads for medicine that you see on
Yeah,
the
it could be like
television, right?
Crest or something that's just like unincorporated area that's nowhere close to the city of El
That's
Cajon.
right.
We
We
don't
don't
know.
know if that means there's of the 63, that's almost all of them, or it's three of them. We don't know that.
Right.
And that's a reasonable question to ask of the county of San Diego. And it's a
Yes, it
reasonable thing
is.
to
Yes, it
expect
is.
to get from them.
Devil's advocate question. If they only limited this to people who'd been picked up on the streets of El Cajon to say, we're going to temporarily get them off the streets and stick them in this motel, would it be as big of a concern for the city? Obviously, there's still the issue of the crime, the drug stuff. But I mean, in other words, if they said we wanted the city to do its fair share and let us have some motel rooms, but only for the people that are from El Cajon, would the city be, sort of okay with that? Or is the big issue that the mayor has kind of accused the county of dumping people here, homeless people who aren't here, when El Cajon already has the highest homeless population of any city in the county other than the city of San Diego. And here you're bringing more of them in, including not just the folks that are down on the luck, but people, it sounds like at least some of them are, uh, drug offenders.
Sure. It would depend. I think we'd have to look at the numbers. That would be one concern. And I think one of the other concern we have is the county's contractor literally turning entire motels into shelters. When 100% of the rooms are occupied by vouchers, in my
Yeah.
mind, it's no longer a motel.
Now the city is actually sending out letters saying they're going to find some of these motels that are over the limit. I believe there's a limit of how many rooms they can use. You're not saying none, but if it's over a certain percentage, what is it, 25%? Am I remembering right?
We sent out a notice of violation of zoning violation to 7 motel owners. We're actually meeting with them on Friday. So I'll be having a meeting with them.
Mhm.
I've invited the county. They've offered not to come or declined the invitation
Oh
to
my
come.
gosh.
It seems like they could be a good partner. They keep talking about wanting to be a partner and collaborative, but they're not going to
But they're
attend it.
not showing up and talking to you guys.
Yeah.
That has to be very frustrating. And we should say, I mean, the press release the county put out the other day, in response to the city's, I think, legitimate concerns, it was bipartisan. This was both Supervisor Joel Anderson and Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, basically accusing the city of, I think in Fletcher's words, trying to push homeless people back on the streets. Um, and the other issue was, I guess, not just the voucher program itself, but the city had suggested that if they're going to do this, maybe the county should at least provide some security, some help with policing. I know you guys are short on police already. You've got a bond measure going on the ballot to try to hire more police. And the county sort of blew that off. I think their exact quote was, let me find it here, that if the voucher program no longer aligns with the city's commitment to addressing the issue of homelessness from a regional approach, we have full confidence in their ability to find solutions and in their police department to ensure the residents of El Cajon are safe. Graham, what's your response to that?
Well, we're doing that actually. We're going to send out a press release. You'll get it later today,
Okay.
um, highlighting 4 pretty significant arrests we've had recently. All individuals participating in the voucher program. One individual we arrested 3 times, and he
Wow.
continued to remain in the voucher program, selling drugs to fellow homeless individuals in the voucher program.
I saw that one of your questions to the county was if somebody's been arrested for drugs and let out while they're awaiting trial or whatever, can they go back in the voucher program? Have you gotten an answer to that one yet?
I have not.
Interesting.
The other thing is we started a pretty I don't want to use the word. I'll use the word heavy enforcement today. Actually, started today. We've
Oh,
made three or four. No, actually, I believe up to 6 arrests today, just today.
and we should say today we're recording this on Tuesday the 20th.
Yes, to the 20. We made 6 arrests, and we're planning on doing some continued enforcement later today, and then we'll be out every day this week doing some heavy enforcement, and we'll see what we can do. So the county asked us to respond, and so we're responding
There
to
you
that.
are. There you go.
The other
Yeah.
thing that is a little shocking to me, and this is, and you've seen the comments made by the county and
Yeah.
primarily by 2 supervisors.
Right.
Um, it's so odd to me at how personal this has become to them. To me, this is just a policy issue. And it's either the county didn't know that their contractor was doing this, and so they feel awkward because they didn't know what was happening.
Then, that could be, maybe they're just sort of embarrassed. And instead of saying, gosh, what can we do to fix this? It's
Yeah,
just kind of a knee-jerk reaction to, sort of deny it, or,
correct.
put the blame on somebody else.
Or,
Uh,
or they knew what was happening the whole time, right? And then I don't know that. So I mean, if you look at the number of participating motels in El Cajon, and you just do, I won't
8,
bore you with the details of the math, right?
right.
But if you just do it on a per capita basis compared to San Diego's massive 2 motels,
Oh yeah, it's 8,
prior to
and
San
nobody
Diego,
else has 8. Nobody else has
that's
8.
right.
Yeah.
You could say that we have 5,000% more than the city of San Diego. Now, for a county that talks about equity, which I believe in, by the way, and it's important,
It is.
um, you would think the county would try just a little bit harder. And that's all we're asking, is just try harder to be more equitable to the jurisdictions that you represent.
Yeah. I want to give you a chance, Graham, for those that may not be, that familiar with what El Cajon has done to help the homeless. I think if one was only listening to the county press release or what it said, you might be thinking that El Cajon is sort of hard-hearted toward the homeless and
Yeah,
hasn't done much. But
yeah,
I know that that's not
yeah,
really true.
yeah.
While one could always argue that there's something more that could be done, tell us about some of the programs that you have supported as a city.
Yeah. Well, let me start with the data first.
Okay.
We since 2020, the beginning of 2020, we have placed 816 individuals into permanent housing. We helped them find permanent housing.
Wow.
Miriam, I do not think there's a city, maybe besides San Diego, that even comes close to that.
That's permanent housing. We're not talking
Mhm.
just a shelter. We're talking permanent housing, over 800 since the pandemic started. That's
That's
phenomenal.
correct. And not through any county voucher programs, just our own programming.
Mhm.
We've helped to provide temporary short-term housing for over 2,400 individuals, 2,400 individuals. Again, I
Yeah.
don't know if you can find another city that has done that level of work.
Right. And you have the East County Transitional Living Center, which
Yes,
the city supports financially, at least the short-term part of its program. I think there's a long-term one that's religious, which obviously you can't support.
right.
The short-term part that at least gets people off the street, and they have to be clean and sober to go into that one, as I understand.
That's right.
Uh,
We have a contract with Home Start where we have a housing navigator. We help connect people with permanent housing. We
Now, what does
provide
Home Start do exactly?
So they find individuals on the street. They do street outreach.
Hmm.
They identify individuals that are ready to get off the street. And there's some, I mean, just it's on. Let's be honest. There are some people that are not ready to be off the street,
Correct.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they find those that are ready to get off the street, and they work with them. They provide some case management. If there's some job assistance that's needed, if there's some sobriety issues, they'll work with them on that. They get them into temporary housing, usually through voucher program. So we use
Mhm.
vouchers as well.
Mhm.
But we're doing heavy case management with them. We then find housing for them.
I have a question. When you do the vouchers, is it different than the way the county does it? In other words, is it going into just something where nobody's really watching what's going on, or is it something where there is some security, making sure there aren't drug dealers hanging around?
It's very different. It's heavy case management where they're actually in a program. They're just not getting off the street for 28 days. There's a goal and end, a
Mhm.
goal in sight. And we don't put them all in one motel. We disperse them. We have 8 people right now, or 8 vouchers being used, 8 motel rooms being used around the city, and
Mhm.
they're spread throughout the city. So we spread that out, so there's not one impact from one community. So then once they find housing, the city actually helps provide either some deposit assistance or assistance with first month's rent. And so we provide some rental assistance to get people into that housing to get that kickstart. So
Nice.
that's one program. The other program is actually a countywide program, but it started here in El Cajon with the Salvation Army.
Mhm.
We piloted it. No one else wanted to touch it. We said it's a wonderful idea, but it's helping people get back to their families.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. That's the one where if their family is, say, out of town, out of state, and they just can't
yeah,
afford the bus fare back.
yeah.
My understanding is you don't just stick them on a bus, that you and the Salvation Army team up to make sure the family really wants them back, to have someone meet them there, maybe if there's a bus stop along the way, especially if somebody's maybe, mentally not all there, to be sure that they don't get lost and not make it there? And then is there follow-up after some period to see how it's going with the
There
placement?
is under our contract, they have to do follow-up periodically. It's been
Mhm.
very successful. We actually, Salvation Army does counseling with the family members because usually someone left, there was some rift. So there's some counseling to kind of build some bridges.
Mhm, mhm,
We help pay for when they get back a bed and some clothes. So they have sort of their set up. They're not just sleeping on a couch.
mhm.
So we help them feel more at home. It
Nice.
really is a way back home. So we've housed through those programs and ECTLC and Home Start that 816 individuals. And this is where I guess where I'm confused, Miriam, is I would think the county of San Diego would be looking at El Cajon and saying, I wish more cities could do what they're doing.
Yeah, there's some things there that could be modeled, at least some parts of it could be maybe emulated somewhere
That's
else, you
right.
would think.
When there are larger cities in El Cajon that do not have shelters,
Yeah.
it baffles me that we've become sort of this target
Yeah.
when I feel like we're doing so much.
Now
And
you
then
also have a small homes program, a tiny homes program that just
and
started for
we
to get
just
women off
opened
the
up,
street.
yeah, we just opened up the emergency cabins at
Mhm.
Meridian Baptist Church.
Yeah, sleeping
Um,
cabins. Uh-huh.
Sleeping cabins. It's targeting for mothers and children. And it's just a great program. It's a model. We hope every city can take advantage of it. We've created the model for this to happen. So
Yeah. One of the
um,
things I think is really cool is the thought that's been given to homeless people who have dogs. You guys figured out that some of them weren't getting in for the services or medical services, or applying for food stamps, whatever they might be eligible to do, because they didn't want to lose their dogs and they're not allowed to bring them in these places. So
yeah.
tell us about how you solve that problem.
Well, actually, we didn't really solve it. We are hoping to. There's
Oh,
actually some state law that prohibits. I'll tell you what the program intended to do. We intended to have a dog owner allow us to sort of watch their dog for a period of time while they got
at the
medical
shelter there,
treatment.
yeah. At the animal shelter.
That's correct. State law requires somebody to turn a dog into an animal shelter that they actually have to relinquish
Oh
their
my,
pet.
you're kidding.
So yeah, we have no control over that. In order for us to touch that dog, it has to be relinquished. And even if we promise that we're not going to give it away or adopt it out, if you love a pet, you're more likely not going to relinquish your pet to
No,
a
you're
government
not.
agency,
Have you
right?
talked to any of the state legislators up there about just getting that law changed? It seems like maybe it'd be a something someone could put through and,
It's a really good
get
idea.
an exception in there for homeless folks, perhaps.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, or what
We
about someone who just has to go in the hospital for surgery, maybe? And, I would think
yeah,
there'd be all kinds of, other options, perhaps.
especially if it's the love of their pet that's keeping them from saving their lives. That's a bad law, right? So we
I
got to
would
work.
agree. I would agree. Well, that's interesting. Next time I chat with one of our legislators, I'll put a bug in their ear about
Please
that.
do. I'll do the same.
Yeah, there you go. Um, on a related note, now last spring, I think it was, the four cities in East County, Lemon Grove, La Mesa, Santee, and El Cajon, signed a memorandum of understanding with the county that was aimed at helping to reduce homelessness by, working together in some fashion. Supervisor Anderson recently sent out a reminder letter that there's about $5 million in a capital emergency housing solutions grant program still there, not claimed. And so far, at least El Cajon has not applied. I'm not sure if the other East County cities have. So could you explain why not? What's wrong with the program, or maybe you are going to apply and just haven't? But what are the reasons why the city hasn't applied for the money?
So actually, only three cities in the entire county have applied for the money, and two of them, San Diego and Vista, it's for safe parking programs. Really, only one city is using it for legitimate shelter. Oceanside is building 50 shelter beds with about $3.3 million and some other federal monies
Yeah, I
attached.
know. I mean, I guess in the county's defense, I know everybody'd been on the county's case forever under the prior board about how come we don't have a homeless shelter anywhere in East County.
Yeah,
So the counties and they've tried, to get them a couple places, and
yeah,
citizens would object. We don't want a homeless shelter in our neighborhood. Then they said, okay, let's put some grant money out there. So cities that have been saying they can't afford it, especially little cities like maybe Lemon Grove, La
yeah.
Mesa, we'll help you. We'll pay for it if you build it, for your homeless folks. So
Miriam, here's the rub.
yeah.
And I call it the Sacramentification of our county.
Okay.
There was a time when the county would reach out to the cities and say, we have a pot of money.
Mm-hmm.
We want to help you build shelters. How could you best utilize these funds?
That would make sense. Yeah.
And then the cities could say, oh, we really need help with capital or land purchase or operations or a myriad of things,
Staffing
right?
or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's not how the county works. The county says, here's our money. Here's all the strings attached. Take it or leave it. There's no negotiation. And then we get mad at you if you don't apply.
So what are the strings that are of concern?
So security, 3 meals a day, washer, dryer, some of those things. So those are some concerns that some cities have. Like, I don't know if that's feasible for some cities. And so I think that is a concern for some, that it's just not feasible. The other is just timing. By the way, it takes a long time to acquire land,
right,
or acquire a motel. And it's almost like they throw this money and say, get it. And there's no time to do it. And I think it goes back again, just the collaborative approach. There used to be a time when we would sit down and figure it out. But now it's, again, we know better. We're so much smarter than you, dumb cities. Take our money. And if you don't, we're going to beat it over. You're going to beat that over your head. So
my question then, Graham, would be, what help does El Cajon need? If the county were to come to you and say, we want to help you with your homeless problem out there, what do you need? What can we do?
Yeah.
What would the answer be?
Well, I think there's two answers. One is, if we were to build another shelter, it would be with long-term operations. That's a real cost. Isn't the capital construction.
Mm-hmm.
That's a one-time thing. But the other thing is, we already believe we have more shelter beds per capita than anyone in the county. In fact, 50% more than the city of San Diego. So we actually would like to see the county use their own money to build shelters where it's needed in Lakeside and Spring Valley, because we know there's a need in both of those locations. So
right, there is.
What prohibits them? So the better question is, county, why aren't you using this money to build shelters in your jurisdictions, right? So I think that's a better question. The other thing I wanted to remind, you mentioned, and the way you said it was that the 4 cities signed an MOU with the county of San Diego. That's actually not a true characterization.
Okay, that was what was in the county release. So if that's not accurate, then
that's not accurate. And I don't know if the supervisor was either been misinformed or is participating in revisionist history. But the reality is, the cities, the 4 cities managers got together and actually had an MOU in the can ready to go. We were ready to present it to our councils.
Okay.
And then we started having a discussion with county staff about maybe there's some value of them being involved. And so the county, we worked with the county for not quite a year, at least 6 to 9 months, renegotiating some of the words. It got done. The county slapped their logo on the corner and then called it their MOU. It's actually, to be honest with you, it's the city's MOU, and we let the county sign on to it. It's not the other way around. So
interesting.
I'd like to remind the county that they get to participate with us.
Yeah, credit where credit's due there.
And this gets back to that Sacramentification of San Diego. It's like, we're so much smarter than you all.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious what you see as the answer. I mean, I know you've done a pretty good job of getting the folks off the street that want help, the ones that are clean and sober or willing to become so, but what is the answer for the ones that don't, the ones that are either mentally ill? I know the governor's working on a care court program, or the ones that are, drug addicted. And I certainly don't want to imply that all or even majority of homeless people fall into those categories. A lot of them do not. Yeah. But I know I've heard folks in El Cajon tell me that what you're left with is a lot of the sort of hardcore homeless on the streets that are the ones that won't go into shelters that are available, but that are, causing these problems for the city. What more can or should be done to address those folks?
Well, I think first it's understanding why we've had this huge spike in homelessness over the last few years. And it happens to coincide with COVID. It has nothing to do with people being sick or has anything to do with people losing jobs. It actually has to do with our criminal justice system. So at any given time, Miriam, you have to recognize that a large percentage of the homeless population is incarcerated. They're either in county jails or some sort of state penitentiary. So for years, decades, the state's homeless solution has been jails.
Yeah.
And I'll make the argument that a prison system probably is a really expensive way to house the homeless, and it is not a good long-term approach.
Yeah, it's certainly not a humane one, especially for the ones that haven't broken any law other than just vagrancy, I suppose,
Correct.
or, you know, peeing in a public park or something.
Yeah.
But maybe, you know, for the folks that are like homeless drug dealers or something, that might be.
Well, let me go back to let me circle back.
Mm-hmm.
So, although that's not a great model,
right?
The state just said, and the county of San Diego said, well, we're going to start pushing people out of penitentiaries. We're going to reduce the penalties for crime, and we're not going to accept people. We're not going to book people into county jails unless they've committed a serious crime.
So
right?
Maybe it's the same number of troubled people or close to it. It's just that they're out on the streets now instead
Exactly right.
in the jail. So it's more visible. We're seeing it now.
That's exactly right. Now, is it better for them to be in jail? No, I'm going to say no, it isn't. But you can't just change that policy and then expect the problem to go away, right?
Right.
So there's been no the voters, passed Prop 47 and Prop 57, which decriminalize a lot of crime, and there's ramifications to that, but no one worked on, well, how are we going to address that? So although the county may be saving money on housing people in county jail, the cities are now suffering with the cost or the burden of those folks now being on their streets. So I think that's an important component that we have to recognize. But the other has to do with drug use and mental illness. And you said it, Miriam, not everyone has a drug problem, but and not everyone has mental illness. But when I see a guy outside my office, I'm fortunate to have these big, beautiful windows in my office. There's a gentleman that will periodically come out and he'll strip completely naked.
Mm.
And where there's once a fountain, which we no longer have water in the fountain because of droughts, he thinks he's bathing in our fountain.
Oh gosh.
And he will be scrubbing his armpits and rinsing himself.
Oh my gosh.
And then he puts his clothes back on, and I watch him walk away, and I think that is not humane. I mean, that's a horrible condition for him to be in. But as a city manager, I have no ability to help him. Because he won't respond to our assistance. So I don't know what the solution is, Miriam, and it's not at the city level. It's got to be a solution at the state level.
I think so. Do you think the care court is going to help? I guess that doesn't roll out for a year, October of next year. But for those that are not familiar, the governor just signed it. It had very strong bipartisan support. I think it only had a couple of no votes in the legislature. And it basically, well, let's back up. I mean, years ago when Reagan was the governor, they basically got rid of the mental hospitals, pretty much let everybody out. And that's when some of this started. And now realizing that went too far one way, now they're setting up care courts where there will be a way to force someone into institutionalized care for some period of time, but there are safeguards that didn't used to be there. So you can't just have somebody decide they're going to lock somebody up because they don't like them and throw away the key. It would periodically come before the judge, and the person would have an opportunity to say, I'm better. I should be back. I should be allowed to go out. But say the schizophrenic who's just off their meds and doesn't realize that they need to be on meds. This might be a solution for folks like that.
Yeah, we're actually, I think we were the first city in the county to endorse the plan. As you know, we have a very conservative city council in El Cajon, and they lauded the governor. In fact, Mayor Wells and I were invited to a meeting with the governor and the mayors of the 10 big cities in the state because of that. And we think it's a tool. I mean, it's clearly not the end game solution, but I think it's an important tool.
And I think voters like it when they see people working together for the public good, regardless of whether an idea comes from the left or the right. You may disagree with everything else that person or that
Yeah,
party does, but if
yeah,
they've got the right idea to solve a real world problem like that, people, they want to see people working together and not just saying, oh, the other side came up with it, so it must be a bad idea.
yeah. I agree, Miriam, and that's I think most people are maybe I don't know if the word disgusted is right.
Mhm.
I don't think they like this banter that's going back and forth between the county and the city. And
I
and I
agree.
and I think you've noticed we've been very careful not to personalize it.
Mhm.
We've been very careful to focus on policy. We've
Right.
made
And I will say, I know that the county, I know the supervisors care about getting help for the homeless. I will say, I think their heart is in the right place in wanting to do something. Their constituents are all, they ran on, we got to do something about the homeless issue, but they've been floundering a little bit. I think, like you say, the devil is in the details. And sometimes what may sound like a good idea turns out to have some unintended consequences that just haven't been dealt with yet.
yeah, but we're trying to keep it professional. I
Mm.
mean, as a city manager, I can't get involved in politics, and
Right.
there's been some swipes as at me and in my ability to run the city of El Cajon. I think one press release referred to the city as a poorly run city. That hurts a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I pride myself on being professional, and I hope most recognize we're one of the best run cities in the county, because we work really hard at it. And so I take that personal, but I can't push back because it's not my place to do so. So I hope the residents of El Cajon will recognize we're fighting for them, but we're also trying to focus on the solutions, not having a tit for tat with the county of San Diego.
Right. Name calling, that sort of thing. It just makes, it polarizes and it only makes things worse. So
It doesn't
sometimes it's
foster
somebody has
that.
to be the adult in the room and say, let's just sit down and we're ready to work it out.
Yeah.
Um, I think you've answered all my questions on the homeless issue, Graham, but I want to just leave the open-ended question of what else is happening in El Cajon that you would like your residents to know about.
There's a lot. I mean, we have a lot of development happening right now. We just
Yeah.
adopted an economic development strategic plan. So
Oh,
we're working with the mall properties to try to figure out a long-term solution for the
oh
mall.
yeah. What's going to happen with Parkway Plaza? People ask me that all the time.
Miriam, it's the challenge is this. I don't think most people realize it, but the mall is actually owned by five independent owners.
Oh, wow.
So getting them all together has been a
It's
challenge.
like
But
herding cats.
it's like herding cats. So we're working on that. I think it has so much potential. It has so much capacity. So we want to help on that process. That's one of the big goals that we're working on. As you saw, and by the way, I can't advocate for a sales tax measure, but I can talk about it. The city council just placed Measure P on the November election.
Right. I should note, I believe the vote was unanimous, and these are five, generally conservative Republicans, generally
Correct.
anti-tax, but saying we need a half-cent sales tax increase, because of the issues with homelessness and crime, basically, are the two issues they're looking to address predominantly with that. Am I right? Or is there anything else that money could be used for?
Those and also just increasing some of our fire capacity,
Ah,
fire and rescue. I think we have access to the polling data that was provided to us, and what's interesting to me, and this is kind of my big takeaway, is I think El Cajon residents appreciate the work that we've done, but recognize we need to take it to the next level. And
right.
I think they recognize that we don't have magic wands either, and that takes some investment, right? It takes money to make money. Well, it takes money to make improvements, and I think if we make the right strategic improvements, it'll actually develop some more sustainability. So the tax base can increase,
Hmm.
and that sales tax can be lowered. And one of the things that we instituted, I think it's the first in the county, is the council actually has the ability to lower the sales tax. That's unheard of, and so
So if you decide you don't need it in the future, there's some huge surplus
that's
that
right.
comes in from something else. Maybe who knows,
Or we
maybe
grow or we
voters.
grow the economy somehow with these we use this money strategically to grow the economy. Then
Yeah.
it allows us to perpetually generate revenue that will then allow us to lower the sales tax. So
Interesting.
kind of fun.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and you've got everything going on with the theater there now back
The theater's
open,
booming.
which
We have
is
some big shows coming up, actually.
what's I Doobie Brothers I heard saw coming in, and who
Belinda
else?
Carlisle from the Go-Go's is coming. And I know these are bands that are probably more my era. Morrissey from the Smiths is coming. I saw the Smiths when I was 16 years old, so this is kind
Wow.
of exciting. So anyway,
That's fun.
there's just a lot happening. We're actually at our next council meeting doing a report, kind of a financial report of how the
Nice.
Magnolia is doing. So encourage
Good.
people to tune into that.
Good. You
Uh,
got Haunt Fest on Main coming up. I
we
will
got
say El
on,
Cajon does such a great job of all
yeah.
the cities. I will say, I think you do the best job on having great festivals that are free, open to everybody, including a lot of your immigrants, in the community, very welcoming and not hitting up the businesses to pay for all of it. And,
Yeah,
like some cities have done.
yeah.
It's so yeah, I would definitely say alcohol is they're definitely doing some things right. One can always it's easy to find, the things that maybe go wrong or that one can criticize, but sometimes we forget, to talk about the things that are really good that are
There's,
happening.
there's a lot of positivity. So we're bullish on El Cajon. It's a great place to be. So encourage people to participate and get involved. We need their help.
Very good. Um, is there I'm going to let you have the last word. Is there anything else you want folks to know about the city of El Cajon?
One last thing, we have a great mobile phone app, so you can report a myriad of problems. If you see tagging or a homeless encampment, you can report it. So I encourage people that have their a mobile phone, just look up their at the App Store, City of El Cajon, download the app, and it helps us be more responsive to everybody. So we encourage people
Awesome.
to
Super.
participate.
We have been speaking with Graham Mitchell, the city manager for El Cajon. Graham, thanks so much for joining us today on the East County Magazine radio show on KNSJ 89.1 FM, Descanso.
Thank you. Anytime.